Paul Metsa's Wall of Power TV is brought to you in part by Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, Two Gingers Irish Whiskey, Grey Wolf Lodge, your home away from home in the North Woods, and the Solar Arts Building in Northeast Minneapolis.
Welcome back to part 2 on Wall of Power TV with my guest, David Foley. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. The term hipster is so, by definition these days, so tortured. But this cat, Dave Foley, is one of the original hipsters. He is a musician, he's an artist, he's a scenester, he knows his history, and this guy's been everywhere. He also owns the smallest record store in America at 38th and Grand. We're just going to start talking and see where it goes. Dave Foley, thanks for being on the Wall of Power TV.
Thanks for having me on the show. You're too nice to me, man.
Oh, man. David, we've talked about everything except your band, Things That Fall Down. Let's start with that.
Okay, so I just wanted to play guitar. I was played guitar late. And I never started when I was like a teenager and that kind of stuff. So I was like in my 20s. So I'm an old guy now. I'm 7 years old.
You're
so,
70?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I like noise.
But you got the body of a 69-year-old.
Okay. Anyway, I would do stuff like, I had this idea of I liked all noisy guitars and blues and stuff like that. So I used to do stuff like, this kind of all comes. I had a loft downtown, so my girlfriend would like to have these like dinner parties. So I had an old turntable that was all crapped out, and I would put records on there like Miles Davis and just move it back and forth, the turntable. Right. And my friend would just play feedback on the guitar and make all her friends pissed off, right? Or then I would read poetry laying on the floor while somebody else played feedback guitar, and I go, well, I should just do that. Right. And so I did this. I was kind of into performance art. So Andrew Lester, who is this artist who is a really great guy, he's from England. And he builds outdoor art. Anyway, so this all kind of gets, one thing leads to another. It's all kind of graduation. So he goes, because I used to want to be a trumpet player. Okay. And so, but anyway, so I was making these sculptures. And so I had this idea where I would get dressed up in a suit and I would get a really super cool old table, because in this warehouse there's lots of weird old tables, and I'd take an axe to it while somebody played guitar. Right. And so Andrew goes, well, why don't we do that where I teach? I told him, he goes, okay. Boy, if you could get a house gig doing that. No, we did a performance at St. Catherine's. Okay. And so but like a weekly somewhere. Yeah, like just come up with ideas. Holiday Inn. Yeah, right. But, so because I saw this guy called there was a guy who played a piano with an axe once. I didn't see, that was after I did this. I mean, I didn't see this guy before that. It didn't turn me on to that. I just thought this idea up, and I thought, well, okay, I'll have short hair and I'll have like a suit, and I'll take an axe to it. And Andrew goes, that's a great idea. You want to do that? And I go, because I was talking about ideas. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. You want to do it in front of my art class at St. Catherine's. Nice. So we rolled up in a pickup truck and hauled this big, huge, 12-foot long, really nice wooden old table. Yeah. And my friend sat there and played feedback guitar, and I took an axe to this thing. And the people were going, and I go, and Andrew goes, the whole thing just destroyed this table, just right into it. And so Andrew goes, anything else you want to do? And I go, and I had all this masking tape, wrap me up in masking tape and so I used to wrap me in masking tape and carried me around the campus on their shoulders. But I was into things like all that, noises, Dada kind of thing, whatever. I didn't have it really formulated into a real idea. I just thought, oh, this would be cool to try this out. Right. You know? But then I thought, well, so I was noodling around on guitars, and I thought, so I was playing guitar a bunch, making, I had this band, we played at the Entry, this guy Baird Michael and I, and he put us a magazine called Minneapolis Incest, I think it was called. And so he was like this performance, he wanted to be a poet and stuff like that. So I played guitar behind him, and then somebody went well, why don't we put a band together? So this bass player, Garrison White, who's a really good bass player, better than good, I met him around a little before the M80 festival. Okay. So him, and then we got a drummer, and we had this trombone player and this guy Scott Brooks, who had a band called The Dogs, and he became the singer. And so we all met at this guy's house. The trombone player and the bass player lived together, and Don Ingebrigtsen. And so this guy who we don't know where he is anymore.
Right.
He was our drummer for a while, and he was a super nice guy. And then we got Buck Hazlett to play drums with us for a while, and he didn't want to do it because his hip was going bad. So we ended up with Steve Foley. So Steve Foley played this, and he played the Replacements for a while.
I actually bought a car from him.
Did you? Toyotas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he got married and stuff like that, and Steve was a really
great cat.
Great guy. And him and I got along good. And so when Things That Fall Down made their album, we got Bob Joslin from Run Westy Run to play drums. And I'm still friends with him. And Bobby is a great drummer. I really like him. And so he goes, we needed, before we got Steve, we had, or somewhere in there was an exchange of drummers. And so we went, I said, you know who's a great drummer? It's Bob Joslin. And they go, oh yeah, he wouldn't. I go, yeah, he will. So I went up to Bob and go, hey, you want to play in our band? He goes, yeah, sure, I like you guys. So he played with us. He's on our album. And Steve Albini, we did the record in Chicago in Steve Albini's house, Things That Fall Down album. And
what year was this, David?
It's 80s or something like that. I can't remember the year. But anyway, so we did the record. The bass player started a record label in Chicago, was going to start a record label in Chicago. So he somehow hooked us up with Steve Albini. And so Steve Albini told me, he goes, so we recorded in his house. That's where his studio was in the beginning.
Now tell the people out there in Wall Apart TV land who else Steve Albini
Steve Albini recorded one of Nirvana's record. He did the Breeders, he did the Pixies, piles of bands.
Yeah.
And from what he told me, he learned how to record people by just taking a tape recorder to a gig and tape recording a band and giving them the tape and telling them if they liked it, they could record at his house. So he's very self-taught. He has a big studio in a building he bought in downtown, somewhere in Chicago. But he used to have the studio in his house. And so we had a couple of horn player in our band, 2 horn players, trombone, and a sax player. And so he recorded the horns in one room, the drums, and you had to play his drums. They're all wooden drums, I mean the best, and all these great mics. He recorded this on a deck he bought from a trailer that belonged to somebody famous that recorded, some big dude recorded this thing. So he put that in his house, and his house was in Lincoln Park, and it was just an ordinary brick house, but the living room was record albums, rows of them, and he had the Flying V, Travis Bean Flying V that belonged to Keith Levine from Public Image, and all these other guitars, and he had Big Black together for a while. But anyway, so him and I, he goes, well, someone's got to mix this record with me. So him and I got some beer, and him and I sat around and mixed the record together. But he's the guy who's credited, and he goes to me, he goes, I'm not supposed to like your music, but I'm going to put my name on your album. And I only put my name on records that I like. And I think it's a cool record. There's a lot of really good stuff on it.
And what was the name of the record?
It's called Disbelief.
Okay.
And we had a poet on there. And if you kind of think about it, like as if you could take some of these songs and kind of quirk them out more, they'd be really cooler. Or they're cool, but I mean, like some of them have like real funky grooves to them. But if you were to take those songs and put, change the lead singer on it, and then put some background singers on it, and put like a horn section on it, in a killer drummer who really punched, you could really take the songs exactly what most of them and really make them really contemporize them. I think there's some really good stuff on them.
So where were you playing out live then?
We used to play everywhere. We opened up for the Gang of Four in the First Ave. McClellan kind of gave us, I would just bother him. Steve McClellan's one of the greatest guys in the world. There'd be no music scene in Minneapolis.
Without Steve McClellan.
I like Prince, don't get me wrong, but Steve McClellan's the guy who established the Minneapolis music. Him and
he built
Hartley Frank. You remember Hartley Frank?
I knew Hartley.
Didn't
Hartley run the Longhorn?
Yeah, he got a friend of mine told me that knew him in high school, said he got buried in his fur coat. In his casket. And he said, and Hartley Frank was this really weird guy. Asked the Suburbs about him. But anyway, he brought the Nerves in, the Stranglers played there, and all these bands played. The B-52, the B-52s got snowed in. They played 3 nights in a row, and Jody Carrillo had these parties at her house, and it was so snowed in, we all stayed at her house overnight. And I think some of those guys stayed at her place. But anyway, Hartley Frank had on his Lincoln Continental Organic Rock 1 on the license plate. But anyway, so Hartley Frank had all these bands came in, and then Steve McClellan got a hold of it Remember Joe Cocker and those guys recorded that album? Joe Cocker, whether it was all the they took all their friends and went on the road.
Yeah.
Well, if you open up the album cover, the shots inside are in the entry of the main door of the First Avenue bar, and it's like hand-colored photographs and then printed. It was like Leon Russell was in the band, Joe Cocker, all those
Mad
guys.
Dogs and
Yeah, that
Handsome.
one. That album's not recorded there, but it's photographed shot at that bar.
Well, I remember when I moved to town in '78, I used to go down to the Longhorn, and things were really starting to gel down there.
Yeah, they were starting to rock.
And I started when I started playing the West Bank, but I lived in South Minneapolis. So I was 6 blocks from Orfolk Jokopis, and so I do my gigs in the West Bank and then come home to party in South Minneapolis with the punk rockers. I got to know Bob Stinson and Dave Perner and the gang. But I remember going down there. I saw the Suburbs several times down there, but I also saw Dexter Gordon at the Longhorn.
Yeah. The all jazz guys played there. Eddie Harris, I think, played there.
Yeah, and then I saw
Spiral Gyro played there, and it was like.
I saw a phenomenal show though with the original Pat Metheny group.
Yeah.
And Pat's still my guy.
Yeah,
And then of course you could go Sunday nights and see Natural Life upstairs.
Right, I know, with Mike Elliott and those guys. But so anyway, all this stuff was going on in downtown Minneapolis. So this one thing, there was a bar across the street that tried to get taken, started to take off.
Right.
It was called the Cat Box. It was in the basement of off of 5th and Hennepin, in the basement.
Okay.
The entrance was on the 5th Avenue, 5th Street side, across from the Longhorn Bar. Okay, I heard this story. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's interesting kind of folklore. You gotta have folklore.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Suicide Commandos are playing in the bar, and a dude came and killed a guy in the bathroom, shot him because there's a hit put on some guy who was in that place.
Right.
The guy followed him in to the bar. It was a purpose, like a murder done on purpose, and he shot him in the bathroom. That's what I heard. Now I don't know if it's good folklore.
Right.
So Chris Osgood could argue maybe.
Right.
But anyway,
Right.
it's Steve Almus. But Steve Almus, there's an interesting guy. He
rodeo.
Yeah, and when he's a really great guy. I really like Stevie. And he was in Cracker with Mark Goldstein and Karen Hagloff and Jay Peck, and these guys. And but anyway, so Steve goes to New York, right? And he's living with Amy Downs. And he'd have these parties at his house, and he'd go, come on over to our place. And so up on the roof of their building on Ludlow Street, down the Lower East Side, it'd be like the Del Fuegos would be up there, or somebody like that.
Right.
There was this bar called 2A where everybody kind of went to. Then I met John Campbell there.
Okay.
Because he'd come in at like 3 in the morning, and they'd shut the gates. Everybody buy alcohol, stick around. He'd play. I mean, that guy he had these long fingernails.
Yeah.
And he had this
Phenomenal
hair.
slide player.
Yeah, and he would play slide. His dobros, he got them from like real famous people.
Yeah.
And he'd sit in his like
It was
green
deep-
sharkskin
deep-
suits.
Deep voodoo stuff.
Yeah, and he had bones around his neck,
Yeah.
and he'd
He was
talk
heavy.
stuff, and he would, you'd do whatever with him,
Yeah.
drink and besides, and his band would rock it out, and it was like him and I liked him. I'd talk to him, so he talked to me, and we kind of
He
became
was
like
a
friends.
New Orleans guy.
Yeah, so we kind of became friendly, but as friends, and so I'd see him and talk to him all the time. He was a super great guy. And Dr. John did his eulogy at the Cathedral St. John Divine when he died.
Wow.
And he just knew everybody, man. And it was, so Steve Almus turned me out. He goes, this guy, Jim Sklunis, you should meet Dave Foley. So like, you guys should get together. His idea was we had this band called the Elvis Beatle Gods. And he'd get together friends of his who played music, and we'd play the Pyramid. And we had to play the songs really slow. And I said to him, we play them any slower, nothing's going to be happening, man. Another brick in the wall going, and Jim would play drums, and Jim would play saxophone, because he played in Teenage Jesus and the Jerks.
Okay.
And he played with the Cramps. So he calls me up like a few years ago, and he goes, "Hey, David, it's Jim in Minneapolis." And he goes, "You going to come see me play?" And I go, well, I live in Minneapolis, Lollapalooza. And I went, so he's playing with the Bad Seeds.
Wow.
And so I came to see him. And then when he comes to town, he always puts me on his guest list. And I go down to see him. At the last time they played at the State Theater, I saw them. We're still friends. He lives in London. He's got a pet pig.
Next time they're in town, you got to take me with you.
Yeah, we'll go.
I'd love to meet
For
him.
sure, let's do it.
For sure.
It's really hot. He's a great guy. And so I'm in the basement with him the last time in his Bad Seeds, and Jim, they're all down in the basement hanging out. And there's this girl down there, and Nick Cave and her are trying to make, it was really cool. Like, this is like, it's all the same.
Right.
All of it is like, everything works with each other. So, one story doesn't matter. There's stories.
Right.
So I go see the show. I had backstage passes to go downstairs to the party. There was no party. It was just the band sitting
Right.
around and all the old food they had eaten, what was leftovers. But anyway, so I was standing by the back door, and this guy comes out, the stage door, and the guy comes out and goes, "Nick will be out in a minute." And he puts a chair down in the middle of the sidewalk. I kid you not. And he puts it in the middle of the sidewalk. There's all these people start lining up on the sidewalk. And they're kind of dressed up, kind of tripped out.
Right.
And there's like 20 people or more. And then Nick comes out and he goes, he's got a white shirt on or something like this. And he goes, "Okay, I'm gonna sit in this chair and I'm gonna smoke this cigarette. I'm gonna sit here, and when I'm done with, no one bother me, and when I'm done with the cigarette, you can do anything you want. You can kiss me,
Right.
I can autograph you wherever you want, it doesn't matter."
Right.
So they just sat there, he's going, the whole cigarette.
Right.
And I think, if I remember right, maybe this is just folklore, I don't know, but somebody, when he threw the cigarette butt on the floor, a guy came up and put it in a plastic bag and walked off with it.
More with Dave Foley on Wall of Power TV after this. Welcome back to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. We are continuing our conversation with the man that has 1,000 stories, Mr. Dave Foley.
Okay, this is like, I was driving cab at this place called Midland Taxi in Queens, and then I drove cab at other weird little cab companies. And so they were always really run down. And so I was going to go to work on a Sunday, which was stupid. I didn't like to work on Sunday, but I needed some money or something. I thought I should just go. So I'm off of Houston Street, down by Avenue B and A in that neighborhood. Because I got there like right where Giuliani was taking over the town.
Right.
I saw John Gotti get popped on the street. So I didn't go to work that day, that Sunday, right? So I'm walking down on a Friday. There was always art gallery openings, and Soho was really happening with art galleries.
And what year was this?
It's the 80s, end of the 80s.
Okay, end of the
So
80s.
Giuliani hadn't become the mayor of New York
Right.
yet, right? So
John Gotti was still the Teflon Don.
yeah, right. And so I went to Midland to get my taxi, went to Queens to get my cab, right across the Queensboro Bridge.
Yeah.
And so, we gave your cab out. I'll give another one. Go, no, I don't want it. I'm going to go back to the city. Go, okay, cool, see you later. So I worked on Monday through Friday. And that guy screwed up the dispatcher and gave my car. They had 275 taxi cabs.
Wow.
Huge. And, that was tripped out. Anyway, so I get off the truck. I go, I'm going to go to some art openings, right? So this is kind of what would happen in New York, right? You could stand still and look and see stuff. Now maybe it's like that. Everybody's on phones now.
Right.
But and it's all condos everywhere,
Right.
so it's all different, you know. But anyway, I get off the train on Prince or Spring Street in Soho, and I'm standing there. I've got my clipboard and my little bag, and I'm like hanging out. I'm going where I want to go, and I look down the street and I see all these guys sitting in these cars, and I go, like, there's two dudes in each car. How many?
Right.
What's going on here? There's like 20 cars, right?
Unmarked cars.
Yeah, and there are all these two guys sitting in the front seat, and I go, what is this, some kind of convention here?
Right,
And there's
right.
a Dean and DeLuca, I think it is, just like right there, glass window, and there was no real coffee shops in New York then.
Right.
And so Dean and DeLuca was having coffee. They had espresso machines. So I just feel like, those cats they're Soho cats are like the people who own property in Soho,
Yeah.
like they have condos or lofts or whatever. And they're in there and they got copper bottom pots hanging at the ceiling.
Right.
It's all duded up, right? And I look down the street and I see this guy coming down the sidewalk and he's got his jacket open. It's John Gotti.
Wow.
And he's got his trench coat on. He's laughing, and I'm going, this is kind of funny. I'm going to stand here and watch the scene. I just think something was going on in my head.
Right.
And he's in front of Dean DeLuca, and I see Sammy the Bull Gravano, I think it was, walk off down the side street, and all these guys get out of these cars and come rushing towards him, and he throws himself up, he gets up against the window and starts laughing, and all the people in Dean DeLuca hit the floor.
Wow, right.
And out
right.
comes, get up against the window, and then like cops drove up, and around the corner comes a white stretch Cadillac limo, and out pops Bruce Cutler, his lawyer.
Wow.
Don't hurt him, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I don't think he ever got out of jail after that.
Wow.
But so I go, wow, can't get any better than this. And I see a bunch of people walking down the street on Broadway. I'll follow those guys, because you could follow crowds into art openings, because it'd be just open to the public.
Right.
So it's a David Lynch art opening, but in the elevator is a Fine Young Cannibals.
Wow.
FYC, steady elevator. I'm going, okay, but it's a David Lynch painting show.
Wow.
And Isabella Rossellini was there.
Ooh.
And I think maybe all these people were there.
Right.
And he had these paintings that had bugs on them. Like he had big, huge abstract paintings, and there was like something in them. He had honey on them, or some of these bugs would crawl around in front of it. And then he had the head, on the desk was a head with some hamburger or something in it, and like all these bugs crawling around on it. And packed with people,
Right.
like Julian Schnabel's characters.
Wow.
But years before that, there was a guy called Nemo Palladino, I think his name is. He's from Minneapolis. He lives in Minneapolis now. But he was living back here. Okay, check this out. The Art Institute was trying to become hipper than what it is.
Right.
Like it's trying to become avant-garde-ish at one point, right?
Minneapolis Art Institute?
So they
Okay.
built this gallery, this thing in the back. So
Yeah.
so I went to an opening there, and there was a couch. This is years before the David Lynch thing. There's a couch
Right.
sitting in a pool of water.
Right.
And a pool of water is like 2 inches thick or 3 inches thick.
Right.
And there's a big couch in it, and you look, and there's all this water around it, and the couch is starting to move. It was all covered with sugar and honey and ants, thousands of ants
Wow.
on this. And he went to New York and he did the same thing before David Lynch did that, where he had a box, plexiglass box with a tree in it, and all the bugs, all the ants are like moving, it's shimmering. And he still lives in Minneapolis and Northeast, and he was in New York and he was doing more digital kind of stuff.
Let's track
But
him down. I'd love to have him on
he
Wall
got-
Power TV.
I think the Lynch nicked that idea because that's too close.
Right.
You know,
right.
and David Lynch is the kind of guy who can go out and find stuff. You know,
Yeah.
get influenced.
You have been to CBGBs, I'm sure, more than once.
Well, I was like that again. I just would. So one night, I'm like walking on the street and I heard television was playing there.
Right.
And I thought, well,
What year?
That was like at the, I don't know what year. It's like the 80s or something like
Okay.
that. So television's playing there, and they have this album called The Blow Up, and I think they recorded it at CBGB's, right? And so they had a song called Little Johnny Jewel that I really think is great. It's on that record.
Right, right.
So I walked to the guy at the door. I go, hey, man, like, look, can I just go in for like a minute? So I got in and I buried myself in the crowd and I got kicked out while that song was being recorded. And I was like up in front, this is my favorite song these guys ever did.
Right.
Because I really like their band, but that's my favorite song they do. Because I had a band called The Blind Obey, and we would do that song.
Okay.
And we had a bass player who's dead now. We had a drum machine. And we would do that tune, me
Right.
and him. And we got pretty good at doing that together. We played the entry and stuff with Art Birnbaum. And then we ended up getting a girl who played drums in the band. We played Loring Bar. We did that song,
Sure.
Loring Bar. But, you know, so I learned, I liked that song. And but anyway, so I used to know Fred Smith, the bass player from television.
Right.
So I'm walking down the sidewalk one day, and I see on Park Avenue, and I see this guy selling stuff on the sidewalk. And I went like, wow, how much for all this stuff? And there was a cassette, The Blow Up.
Nice.
And Todd Rundgren, from what I've got my wires across, but Todd Rundgren recorded that cassette. It says produced by Todd, I think. Anyway, and so I went to Fred, I got something for you, go here. And he goes, I don't have this.
Wow.
And he goes, I bought it for $1. But I also bought, you remember Valerie Solanas?
Yeah.
She's the one who shot Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol, right.
Well, she wrote a book called something about the killing of men or something like that. It's this book. And I was walking on the sidewalk, and I found it on the sidewalk for $1.
Wow.
And I went, whoa, man, this is like, it was like, I mean, stuff you'd find on the sidewalk.
Right.
I'm walking down, one time going to meet my friend Terry Davidson, who still lives in New York, in upstate New York. And
Yeah, well, Terry.
yeah, you know Terry.
In
The new dictator of the world, the ruling dictator, John Paul.
John Paul Metsa.
Yeah.
My beatnik nephew,
Yeah,
my brother John.
the new ruler of the North, the ruler of the North. I love that guy.
Loves you, man.
He's a cool kid, man.
So you did some painting up there for Terry a lot.
Yeah, I used to paint their house and stuff, and him and I would hang out. Yeah. But anyway, I know I got cut off the beaten path. But okay, so we're going to see Terry, right? And I go, and there was a Salvation Army outside of Soho. Right. Like the place was getting really expensive. Right. The places were all sold off. The people lived in them, and there were like famous people living there. And Finelli's bar is still there, and it was still there, you know. And I used to go when Joe Finelli used to run the bar back in the 70s. Yeah. I'd drink there.
No.
He was the guy who owned Finelli's, the old man, and he died behind the bar. Yeah, everybody used to go there, man. You'd be in the back room, and he would come in and go, everybody into the other, could we all move? And then the the mob would come in there, because they were down the street. Right. They'd hold their meetings there, because there was no Joe kept it cool. And you know Doug Anderson?
Yeah, I know Doug.
Okay, so this all everything hooks together. Doug Anderson told me the story that when him and his wife moved into Little Italy, they got an apartment in a building, and these guys came up and knocked and told them, and we know who your name is, and then who he was, and he said, you want to be the caretaker of the building? And he goes, why? Because, well, you got a kid and your wife, you're married, you seem like a stand-up guy. And Joe Finelli's, Mrs. Finelli lives in this building.
Wow.
So we want to have somebody we trust. He says, no one will ever bother you. He's right over in Little Italy, near there. No one will ever bother you. So he's like, this guy, from what he told me, some guy comes up to start panhandling. These guys roll up in a car, threw the dude in the back seat, and took off with him.
One more thing, David. You were talking about before you got off on this other dozen stories, something your mom told you.
Oh, she said to me, my mom said to me, she said, you know, you could be happy in a phone booth in South Dakota all by yourself.
That's the perfect
and she said to me when she was going to die, she was like older and she's in her wheelchair. She goes, I want to talk to you in the kitchen. And I go, what's going on? And she goes, and I'd go see her like every weekend and hang out with her and have pizza and stuff like that. And my dad too. And she was living out south. And I go, she goes, you know, I'm going to die pretty soon. I go, no, you're not. She goes, oh yeah, I am. She goes, you know, I don't worry about you, but the other two, I do.
David,
thanks, man.
I don't worry about you either.
Okay.
David Foley on Wall Power TV.
Thank you very much.
This
was cool.
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with David Foley as much as I did. Thanks for tuning in to Wall of Power TV. Stick around next week. We'll be back, same time, same station, and we'll save you a seat. I'm Paul Metsa. Bye.
She's a hot little woman, she's lovable the night and day. She's a hot little woman, she's lovable.